Madam President, thank you. And let me just begin by thanking the senior senator from the state of Florida, who a few moments ago made some very kind remarks about me, and I appreciate that very much. And let me just say you are the best python hunter in the Senate. And those who don't know what I'm talking about can look it up in the newspaper accounts of your endeavors a few weeks ago in the Everglades. So I look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for your friendship and for your kind words. Madam President, I wanted to stand here today and just take a few moments. I've heard a lot of discussion today on the floor. A moment ago, we were just talking about the STEM visas and the need to reform that process. I wanted to take a step back and talk a little bit about the immigration issue in general. There's been a lot of conversation about that here on the floor of the Senate, certainly out in the American public. This is a contentious issue, and I think it's clearly important to understand where we stand today, what it is that's happening, what it is that's not happening, and the way forward in that regard. And I hope I can do that in under 10 minutes here tonight, this afternoon. Let me begin by saying something that I think unifies all of us, and that is the belief that legal immigration is good for America. Legal immigration is a good thing for our country. And the vast majority of Americans would agree with that. Legal immigration has been a critical part of our heritage, and it is a critical part of our future. We just discussed one aspect of legal immigration that's critical for our future, and that is in the technology field. I guarantee you that if you go into the agricultural industry, they will tell you the same thing. Legal immigration is good for our country. It's important for our country. The second thing people will tell you is that illegal immigration is not good for America. I know both sides of this coin firsthand. I didn't read about this in a book. I didn't watch some movie last week about immigration. I live this issue on a daily basis. I live in a family of immigrants, married into a family of immigrants, in a neighborhood of immigrants, in a community of immigrants. I see all the good things that legal immigration has done for America, and I see the strain that illegal immigration places on our country. We have a fundamental problem in America today, and that is that we have a broken legal immigration system. And we have a very serious illegal immigration problem. And those are the things that we are trying to address in a common sense way that's good for America. And what you saw yesterday was the release of some principles. It's not a bill, it's some principles. It is basically the architecture of the work that we hope to undertake in conjunction with every one of my colleagues here. It's not a secret group that's going to meet and force some issue upon you to take it or leave it. It's the beginning of a process that we hope to lead to a real solution. Part one of that process is we need a legal immigration system that works. In fact, our broken legal immigration system is a significant contributor to illegal immigration. It is so expensive, it is so complicated sometimes to legally immigrate to the United States or to renew a visa that it is encouraging people to do it the wrong way. We have a system that doesn't reflect the reality of the 21st century, and that needs to be addressed. That is one of the top priorities of this system. The second priority is this. This is a sovereign country. As a sovereign nation, the United States of America has a right to have immigration laws, and it has a right to enforce our immigration laws. And that's important to point out sometimes. We lose sight of this, that we have 1 million people a year who immigrate legally to the United States permanently. No other country in the world is nearly as generous. There isn't even a close second. 1 million people a year who wait in line and pay the fees and come here the right way. And so if you don't enforce the immigration laws, you're undermining that effort. In fact, you're discouraging it. You're being unfair to it. So we need to have immigration laws that work and that are enforced. But we have a third problem, and that is right now in this country, at this very moment, estimates say that as many as 11 million human beings are in the United States without proper immigration documentation. Now let me be clear, on the one hand, the vast majority of these folks are not victims. They knew what they were doing, and what they did was wrong. They don't have a right to illegally immigrate to the United States. There is no such thing as a legal right to illegally immigrate to the United States. On the other hand, these are 11 million human beings, 11 million people who, irrespective of how they did it, came here, the vast majority of them, in pursuit of what every one of us would recognize as the American dream. And so as a policymaker, as someone who passionately loves this country, as do all my colleagues and everyone watching, I realize we have 11 million people here who are undocumented. What they did was wrong, but they will probably be here, almost all of them, for the rest of their lives, with or without documents. So what I want to do is I want to say, okay, we need to deal with this. We need to modernize our legal immigration system. We have to deal with the 11 million people that are here now in a way that makes sense, not a talking point. And we have to make sure that this never happens again, that we never find ourselves back where we are right now. I hope I never again in the future have to come back here and say, guess what, folks? We have another 5 million people that are here undocumented. And let me be clear, I personally will not support any immigration bill that does not prevent that from happening. But it all starts with dealing with the reality that we have 11 million human beings who will be here the rest of their lives with or without documents. We have to deal with that. What these principles say is, number one, let's modernize our legal immigration system. Let's have an agricultural program that works. Let's have a high-tech visa program that works. We have to have a 21st century immigration system, which means we can no longer afford to have less than 10% of the people who come here based on skills. We need to change that, not by undermining family-based immigration, but by reforming the programs that we use for skill-based immigration. We need to modernize it. The second thing is we need real enforcement mechanisms. There are 3 things that work. Number one is securing and getting operational control of the border. And by the way, this is not just an immigration issue. The border is not just an immigration issue. I'm not in favor of a housekeeper or a landscaper coming across the border illegally. I'm not in favor of that. But what keeps me up at night is a terrorist coming across the border. And a porous border, the north and the south, leads to that possibility. So the border is as much about our sovereignty and our national security as it is about immigration. The second thing is a workplace enforcement mechanism. We need to have a reliable, in the 21st century, we can't come up with a reliable way to verify whether the people that are being hired are legally here or not. And the third thing is the visa tracking. We have all these people that come into the U.S. on visas. We track when they come in. We don't track whether they leave or not successfully enough. So we don't know where they are, if they're here or not. We have no idea. 40%. As much as 40% of our illegal immigrants, 40% of our undocumented folks are here on visa overstays. They didn't sneak across the border. We have to deal with those 3 things as well. And then we have to deal with the 11 million. And the way to deal with them is not blanket amnesty. What my principles outline, what the group's principles outline, is a process that works this way. If you are here undocumented, you must come forward. There will be a background check conducted on you. If you have committed serious crimes in the United States, you will be deported. If you have not committed serious crimes in the United States, you will then have to pay back taxes, and you will have to pay a fine, and what you will get is basically the equivalent of a non-resident visa that allows you to work here. You do not qualify for federal financial benefits, so you are not a strain. I've heard that concern raised. This is going to place a strain on our social services. As a non-immigrant visa holder, you do not qualify under existing law right now. You do not qualify for federal benefits. What you get is a work permit, the ability to be here legally. We know where you are, we know where you live, we know where you work, you pay taxes, you've paid a fine, this is not amnesty, and you have a non-immigrant visa. And there's nothing you can do with that visa but stay here, work, you can travel to visit relatives. You can't turn that into citizenship. It's a non-immigrant visa. And they will have to remain in this process, in this probationary phase, for a significant period of time. Not an unreasonable period of time, but a significant period of time. And after that period of time has elapsed, and if they have complied with all the requirements of that probationary period, and if it is certified that the enforcement mechanisms are in place and have happened, that's critical. Then, and only then, do we then move to phase 2. And this is what phase 2 is. It's very simple. Phase 2 is we will now go to these folks and say, okay, you will now be given the opportunity to apply for a green card using the same process as anybody else anywhere in the world will apply. The same process. In essence, all we're going to give them is a chance to do what they should have done to begin with. All we're going to eventually give them is a chance to apply the way they should have applied from the beginning. And here's what's important. They'll have to get in line. People say, what's the big deal about the line? The big deal about the line is that all those people that have done it the right way, it's not fair to them to allow someone who didn't do it the right way to leapfrog them. In essence, we can't make it cheaper and faster to immigrate here illegally than it is to immigrate here legally. And ultimately, they'll have to get in line. When their turn comes up, they'll have to qualify for the visa they've applied for. And if all that works out, then they will get a green card. And once you have a green card, depending on how you got it, you will have to wait about 5 years before you can even apply for citizenship. This is the process and the principles we have outlined. Now, I've heard concerns. They are all legitimate concerns. I want to say something. Just because someone raises concerns about our principles doesn't mean they're ultimately going to be against it. It means they have legitimate concerns. People say it's wrong to reward people who have done this the wrong way. We agree. That's why you can't allow them to leapfrog anyone. That's why the line is important and the waiting period is important. They say we're not enforcing. I heard Senator Sessions earlier say, we're not even enforcing our current laws. That's true. And one of the reasons why they're not being enforced is because the current system doesn't exist. It doesn't work. What we have now is de facto amnesty. If we do nothing, what we have is de facto amnesty. because we don't even know who the undocumented are. You couldn't enforce it even if you wanted to. And that's why we have to deal with this issue. They talk about the cost of social programs. If you're on a non-immigrant visa, you don't qualify for the social programs by current law. Look, there's a lot of work to be done. What we announced yesterday is not a plan, it is a framework. And that framework has to now be turned into legislative language. That's a lot of hard work. But I hope people will take this as an opportunity to come up with an issue that is solvable, that we can address, that we can bring conclusion on. It'll have to be done the right way, and it will not be easy. In a few hours, the president will give a speech in Nevada. And early press accounts concern me. I don't want to turn this into a partisan thing. Let me just say this. If this endeavor becomes a bidding war to see who can come up with the easiest, quickest, and cheapest pathway to green card possible, this thing is not going to go well, folks. We have now a very common sense and reasonable set of principles, and I hope what the president will say today is that he hopes that that process succeeds. But if his intentions are to trigger a bidding war, to see who can come up with the easiest process, this is not a good start. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I hope my colleagues will do the same. I am deeply committed to the rule of law and to having an immigration system that works. I hope we can work together to accomplish that. I yield the floor.